Batra Daf, Pedal Amud Aleph, 15 lines down. Mishnah mentioned Shmahdim said Lebanaf, you said red wheat ended up being white. Amar Papa, he just notes. Bigtani Lebanaf, in fact, the Mishnah refers to one wheat as white. Shmamina Haishim She Sumaktihi. We see from there that the sun actually is red from the description. Teda, and I can prove it to you. Because at night, at morning, at nighttime, when the visibility is not as bad because it's near the horizon, it's red. And the fact that we can't see it as red during the day is because our sight can't handle it. Meti, have a question. Regarding Sirat, it says its appearance is deeper than the skin. What does that mean? It's like the sun, which is deeper than the shade. So seemingly, over there, Sirat is white. Are we saying over here that the sun is white? We compared it to Sirat. The Gemara says no. There's some differences and some similarities between the sun and Sirat. Similar to the sun in regards that the shade is deeper than the shade. The color is deeper in the shade. But it's also not similar to the sun because the Sirat is white and Adam and here the sun's red. And what we thought originally that Sirat is white. How would you even think that if we know that the sun's red at nighttime and in the morning? How would you even think if the sun was white? The Gemara says no. It's not because maybe you might think in the morning it's red, is in the east. Because maybe it's passing through nearby the rose garden of Gan Eden, and the redness tinges the rose petals glowing. Depending on nighttime, it turns red in the west because because it's passing by the opening of Gehinam, which is in the west. The opposite, morning and night, Gehinam and Gan Eden. But basically, that's what would have been our other thought process if we would have assumed that the sun was white. Okay. If we, in the case of the Mishnah, if they agree to sell them wine and end up being vinegar, both can retract. Maybe our Mishnah is like going to be not like Chachamim. Tanya Berta says, wine and vinegar are considered one species and are able to be used for each other regarding Ma'aser. I could separate wine for vinegar and vinegar for wine. Rabbi says, no, it's according to, it's two species. We see our Mishnah is according to Rabbi. The Gemara says no, not a proof. Even Hamim would agree in our case. Only time is machlok between Rabbi and Rabbanan is regarding Maaser and Truma. According to Rabbi the Amar Rabbi Menayin Turim min Amnei Yafash Truma Truma. Shneimar v'lo tesu alav het b'hamnechim halbo. How do we know that you're allowed to use bad stuff to take as the maaser for good stuff? So I have high quality stuff and low quality stuff. I'll take off maaser from the low quality so I can have all the good quality for myself. How do we know it works? Because the pasuk says don't sin while separating maaser. Mimenu. We see that the fact that it's still kadosh, yani the maaser works. What would be the sin? And the fact is, we see from here that the fact that you are separating bad stuff for good stuff, it's good, it works, but it's a sin. So the only time Hachamim would have a machloket with Rabbi is one versus vinegar to use one for the other. Yes, you're allowed to use vinegar for wine, but we don't want you to. Regarding sales, obviously regarding sales, Hachamim would agree to Rabbi in this case that it's considered separate items and therefore they're both able to retract because some people want A and not B and B not A. Okay. Someone sells fruits to his friend. $10 per pound of peaches. Mashach, let's say the guy measured, he pulled the produce, but he didn't measure how much he's taking. Can I acquire it, pay afterward? If you measure it, but didn't take do mishicha, you didn't take it, lo kana, you don't acquire it. If the guy is smart, so he should rent the place. What that means? Someone's buying flax from his friend. He doesn't acquire it until he moves it from one place to another place. The flax is still attached to the ground, but when he detached it, he harvested it. Can I acquire it immediately? You don't have to lift it. Once you're harvesting it, that's a good enough kinyan, even for just a small amount of it. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yasef, Amar Yochanan, Madar. If the seller measured the produce using his own scale and whatnot, then he put it on the simta. We had simta before. Simta is a place in public property that is designated as business. So if I want to do business with you, we bring our stuff, our money, and our produce to Simta, and I can use the Simta as a place to acquire your stuff even though generally I can't acquire it on public property, over here this place is designated to acquire items, and therefore it works. So if I put it on the simta, the buyer acquires it without touching it. He said, maybe you misheard what Rabbi Yochanan said. That only applies when you put it into the guy's actual bucket, not just measuring, putting on the simta floor. You have to put it into the buyer's bucket. But if you put it on the floor, you don't acquire it. Amarle answers him back. Very harsh. He said, it looks like this guy never learned Gemara before in his life. Why would Rabbi Yochanan need to teach you if you're putting it into the buyer's bucket that the buyer acquires it? Obviously, he has to teach you a hidush, and the hidush is, right, although as pashut, it's obvious. The hidush is that if you put it into the simta, the buyer still acquires. That's a hidush. The Gemara says, "Kibla meinen lo kibla." Did Rabbi Zera accept that answer or not? Yeah, it's a beautiful answer, but is that a good answer? Tashma will bring proof. He answered. He did accept it. Why? A courtyard that's owned by two people can acquire one item. Can acquire an item for each other, from the other. Sorry, my lava sounds like even on the ground and not through their courtyard. The Gemara says not a proof. La metoch kvato. Some other case where you put it into the guy's container and not a proof for how the hidush is, meaning the initial way Rabbi Zera understood Rabbi Yochanan, only the container, not on the floor. Let's bring different proof. Even actually we can solidify that. Rabbi Yaakov said that if a seller put it into the simta, lo kana, you don't acquire it. Something is a stira. You acquire simta or not? The Gemara says no, it must be from here. We prove from here. In Rabbi Yonah's case, where it works is where I'm putting the Brooklyn bucket. That's where you acquire it. In the case we don't acquire it, is where I put it down to the ground. Shema mina, it's a good proof, and maybe Rabbi Zera did not accept Rabbi Asi's interpretation, and he still holds like the initial way he understood that you have to put it into the bucket of the buyer in order for the buyer to acquire it immediately. Tashma bring proof. I measured the produce, but I didn't do mishicha, I didn't pull it. Look, you don't acquire it. My lab is simta, since seemingly even in the simta, you don't acquire it against Rabbi Asi. The Gemara says no, it's not a case public property. You don't acquire it because you put in public property. The Gemara says, if the Mishnah is referring to public, but the first part of the Mishnah said, if I performed the kinyan, I moved it, but I didn't measure it, can I acquire it? But you can't acquire things through Meshicha in public property. Say, Mesira works in public, and a courtyard does not belong to either of them. Meshicha, pulling, only works in a simta, or in courtyard belongs to both of them. And a lifting acquires anywhere. So we see from his lists of kinyanim that Meshicha only works in a simta, but not public. So how can our Mishnah be referring to a case of public? Mar says, Mishnah said when you moved it, Meshicha, what does that mean? You pulled it from public to the simta. Mar says, if that's the case, the next part of the Mishnah says, if someone's smart, so you should rent the place. And if you're talking about public property, who are you renting it from if it's public property? What was the Mishnah said, if you're smart, rent the place. But if it's public, who are you renting it from? Mar says, the Mishnah is saying as follows: if the produce is in private property and you can't do Mishicha there, it should be smart. So rent the place that the produce is on, and you can acquire it through that. Rav Shmuel both say, a person's utensil, a person's, let's say, his bucket, can acquire something from him no matter where it is. Public property. They both say, I feel even your bucket can acquire something for you even in public property. In the case of Rav and Shmuel, is talking about a case in public. In the case of in Resh Lakish, is talking about in a simta. So why would they call it a public property? Why would they call it simta? It's public property. Doesn't mean literally public property. It means it's not private. But they hold that it has to be a simta, just like the other opinion. Gemara says, I can even prove it to you. A person's item can acquire from him anywhere he has a plate, he has the right to put it. If he has the right to put it there, yes. If not, not. Seemingly, we prove from here, we see from here that Rabbi is saying that Rabbi Yochanan and Kish also hold that the simta, you can use your item to acquire it, but not an actual public property. Don't think that your item can acquire in public property. That doesn't make sense. Nobody agrees to that.